Welcome to the People of AI podcast, showcasing inspiring people with interesting stories in the field of artificial intelligence. I'm Ashley Oldacre. Let's jump right in. This podcast is sponsored by Google. Any remarks made by the speakers are their own and are not endorsed by Google. Hello, everyone. Ashley here. Welcome to another Google I/O special for the People of AI podcast. As most of you know, Google I/O 2024 happened this past May with exciting announcements and updates to Google products and features. And no surprises, AI was a top topic this year. And I'm thrilled to introduce you to our very special guest today to tell us more about Google I/O and the exciting AI launches that were released. Welcome, Sachin.
Hi, Ashley. So excited to be here.
We're very happy to have you. So with all of our guests, we will start out by reading your bio. So Sachin Kotwani is a product manager with a special passion for making software development productive and fun. He is a lead on Google's central AI and ML team focused on on-device machine learning. Prior to his current role, he worked on other teams at Google, including Firebase, Google Cloud, and Google Play. He holds an MBA from Carnegie Mellon University and a dual bachelor's degree in business management and computer science from the University of Missouri-Columbia. His hobbies include cooking, traveling with his family, and tinkering with mobile apps and IoT devices. We're so happy to have you, Sachin. And so with all of our guests, tell us a bit about yourself and take us as far back as you'd like to go.
Again, super excited to be here. It's such an honor to be chatting with you and to be present for this audience. I'm going as back as I remember, it's birth, of course, right? So I'm, of course, originally Indian, and I was born as an Indian citizen to Indian parents, but I was born in Spain. I grew up in a tiny city in the tip of Africa called Ceuta, which is part of Spain, and spent all of my childhood there, and then moved with my entire family to the US right before my senior year in high school. And then attended college and then grad school here. So, that's the beginning of my journey.
Wow. So already with multiple languages, I'm assuming.
Yeah, 4 languages: English, Spanish, Hindi, and Sindhi. All sort of, I grew up listening to all of them. Obviously in Spain, Spanish was my native language, but then at home, listening to all those languages, kind of just grew up with it. And I was fortunate to have that, right? Like I didn't actually have to put effort. English was actually the one that I wasn't as fluent in, and just moving to the US at that age helped with that. And I did remember taking classes in English, but everything else, just, listening at home was a fun way to learn.
Wow. So did you go to school, to the public school in Spanish until senior year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
It's funny, when I came to the US in high school, I wasn't very confident in my English. And, had to it took me about a year or so, even though I was studying it. It took me a little while to kind of get used to speaking it. And now whenever I go back to Spain, especially if I want to talk about technology or business, I'm like, I don't know what the words are in Spanish. That's changed.
I can understand that. Same for me. I grew up in Switzerland speaking French, and so I'm fluent. But then I can't speak about things in French like ML and
yeah. How do you say on-device machine learning in Spanish? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what a transition. That must have been pretty big. And so when was your introduction into tech? Did that start in Spain, or was that in college, or sort of, and you also had an interest in business management as well. So sort of, how did you sort of get into tech, and specifically on devices, and sort of your journey with that?
In technology and computers, I actually started pretty early on. I got a computer when I was 7. It was a Sinclair Spectrum with all of 48 kilobytes of RAM, and you attach this cassette player to it to load programs and save programs and that kind of thing. And yeah, I was fortunate that my parents got it for me. I don't thinking much, right? That he'll probably like it. And I remember getting that. And at first, like any kid, would just play games and do that sort of thing. But then I remember going to the public library and checking out books on programming, which is like basic programming for that computer. And I would just literally, old school copy paste, right? I would read and type and run the programs, and it was a lot of fun. And then I started tinkering and modifying them. And my parents noticed that I was having fun with that. So I took some classes also, while I was still young in Spain. And so that was the sort of start of my interest and passion in just programming and technology in general.
And so that was on, that was on your computer, but I think you also focus a lot on device, which I think is defined as not just computers, but phones and things like that. And I think those came later, but sort of how is that evolution of like moving from sort of your laptop or your computer to sort of a handheld device?
You have to fast forward quite a few years from there to move to the US. I started studying business management. That's sort of what I felt like I always wanted to do. But then I'm like, I'll do a minor in computer science. And as I started doing, I'm like, no, I'll do both. I'll do a dual major and I'll do computer science as well. So studied it more formally, did programming. And then when I graduated, I worked in healthcare IT, software and consulting. So I never really left the software development and computer world. But it was actually at the same time that I joined Google, and I joined as a strategy and operations manager because I came more from the MBA and the business background. Uh, at the same time, I'm like, mobile apps are taking off, and let me see what this is about. Let me just download an IDE and see what I can do and see if I still have those skills. And so I started building a mobile app, not thinking much. Really, it was like a hello world app. And then I started building it. I'm like, it'd be good to build like, I don't know, like a recipe app. And back then, there weren't that many apps. It was still like really the early days. And so I built it. I built a back end for it. I built it for an Android first, and then I added the iOS version. And as part of doing all of that, I really became very fluent with all the different developer tooling available, and particularly for mobile devices. And so that's kind of where the mobile and devices part and interest started.
So it was sort of building your own on device application and then sort of seeing it grow and sort of getting interested in building that out and understanding more how it works and sharing that with other developers.
So that app, I just found a niche. It was like vegetarian recipes because I'm like, let me see what kind of recipe apps don't exist. And so that was a category, and it ended up getting 500,000 downloads. And so what's interesting is that I then used that experience to transition into product management at Google. And I remember going to the interviews, and like the beginning of the conversation before the scripted questions would be like, well, why are you interested in product management? I'm like, you know what? I actually built this app and I built the back end for it on Google App Engine. Isn't that cool? And so that led me to my first product management role, which was in Google Cloud. I helped launch the Cloud SDK, and I also worked on what was then a plugin for the Google Cloud plugin for Eclipse. And Eclipse used to be the most popular way to develop Android apps back in the day. And so I was the product manager for that. I then joined the Google Play team, focused on ad-related products. And then after that, I joined Firebase. Of course, Firebase is very well known in the developer circles as the backend and services provider for mobile app developers. And while I was there, I had a colleague who told me, you should really look into this AI thing and machine learning. You should really learn that. And I had already tried like a course before, and I'm like, I don't know, like this doesn't look too interesting. And he's like, no, you should look into Andrew Ng's deep learning AI course, and you like it. And I remember doing that, and it's still telling him, I'm like, this is painful. It's like, yes, it's like going to the gym, but you need to do it. It's like, it's the future. AI and ML is the future. I mean, it was tough, but I'm so glad I did it. It was, can't remember, it was 5 or 6 courses that took like, 6 months or so to get through all of it. And that was my introduction to on-device machine learning, or machine learning in general, rather. And right around that time, this opportunity came up at work, and it was in a collaboration between the Android and the Firebase team, and we launched MLKit, which is very popular and successful SDK for machine learning on device and also for devices. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I just brought my passion for like software development and mobile and machine learning, and where it all came together.
And product too.
Yeah, and product.
What's fascinating as well is you have, combination of things that you're really interested in, that you have been interested in since you were young, but have accumulated other interests along the way. One of the fascinating things about most of the guests that we talk to is that they do have this sort of unconventional journey. And I guess there is no conventional AI journey because it's so new. And so in hindsight, you have business management, you have computer science, you have product. How do these things intersect? If you were to give advice to yourself back then, like how would you say like all of these things fit together?
That's an excellent question. I don't know how they all fit together, but what's interesting about this and about the journeys of all of us, like different people with different backgrounds and different experiences, is that, and not to sound too cheesy with this analogy, but it's one that I've been using, is that I feel like we're all in a way like LLMs, right? Like we all have architectures, and like I think the architectures are actually, for all humans are pretty similar. I would say like number of billion of parameters and number of neurons should be like not too far off from human to human. But then the training data that you get along the way is very different from one human to another, and that's what makes us unique. And for me, a lot of it, a lot of the my training data, my education has been just like that formal education, and having the fortune to have the background that I have, growing up in Spain, going to the school, having the teachers that I had. But then a lot of it has been serendipitous. It's been interest that I developed, or I'm like a GitHub repo that I ran into, and I'm like, I'm going to play with this, and this is so cool. And all of that just made me who I am today and developed the interest that I have. And that also means that there are areas, like for example, I could have chosen to go deep into a particular aspect of like software development or mobile development or ML, and I chose to have this like broader view of like a collection of things, which I think is very useful for product management, because it allows you to kind of open yourself up to what customer problems you're trying to solve, and also having that business angle to it, and having some experience in some domains, which in my case happens to be developer tools and mobile and machine learning. And so, that's kind of what makes me who I am, and what I can contribute.
I love this analogy of we're all just large language models. And I love the
We are more than
analogy.
that.
Yeah, that we're sort of, it's true. Like we're all trained on different data, and that's kind of what makes us unique. And it's true. It's sort of this an amalgamation of all of the different experiences that we've had. So you also shared this incredible journey of getting into Google and the various products you've worked on and help launch and troubleshoot. In your current role now, you are working with machine learning on device, and there was a big launch that happened at Google I/O. So before we get into that, was this your first Google I/O?
No, I've been to several Google I/Os, actually lost count. Even before it was hosted in its current location, where it used to be at the convention center in San Francisco. I've been to several Google I/Os, and they're always so much fun.
For some folks who don't really know what it is, or even what it looks like what's special about Google I/O and why is it such a big thing?
The official answer is it's Google's annual developer conference, but it really is so much more than that, right? You can start by you hear about a lot of cool technology and the latest launches and innovations that Google has come up with, but more than that, it's, I think, like a celebration. It's a celebration of like just technology, people. I think it really comes down to that. I love just going to the conference, running into developers, and having all sorts of conversations, from your student who's just getting started and learning about technology to software engineers from large companies looking to solve a specific problem, and making those connections, and also reconnecting with my own colleagues from like other parts of the company that I haven't seen in years. It's all about the people, and the technology is a passion that we all share, and it's just great to have the fortune to be part of it year after year.
Yeah, this was my second one. And I do feel the energy around gathering people. And what's unique about it too is that you have, these two big developer keynotes, but then you have sessions and workshops and demos and all kinds of things that are sort of surrounding these two big keynotes, which facilitates that engagement with the community. And I think you also gave a talk, I believe.
Yes, I gave a talk on Google AI Edge, and just in general covering about what we have to offer in the on-device machine learning space. And this year we actually launched quite a few features, and we launched the Google AI Edge brand, which brings all of these technologies such as TensorFlow Lite and MediaPipe and Model Explorer and other tools into a single destination, a single umbrella. And so, it was really exciting talk. We also had a demo booth, had a lot of people stop by, ask questions, tell us about the things that they're trying to do with it. It's a lot of fun.
That's very exciting. And we'll link your talk in the show notes as well if people want to watch it. So it is kind of an exciting thing to have sort of all of these different products like TensorFlow Lite and MetaPipe underneath this one umbrella. What are the benefits of this? Why was this decision made?
I mean, let me start by talking about the benefits of on-device machine learning in general first. And machine learning traditionally is perceived to be something that requires a lot of computational power, a lot of data, and of course, all of that continues to be true. But what has changed is that whereas before you needed to run this on a large workstation or in the cloud, people are running machine learnings, although they're somewhat smaller but still very capable models on devices and on the edge. And the benefits of doing that are, you know, obviously you have all the processing happening on the device. So as a developer, for example, you don't need to worry about maintaining a cloud instance or the costs associated with it, or like the updates or maintenance required. Also, the benefits of for the consumer is that for certain use cases you require um, low latency, or you require even offline connectivity. One particular example is background blur in Google Meet. That is something that can you imagine sending every single frame and then like processing it, and then on the well, the frames do get sent, but then processing it using machine learning on the server side, that would just be computationally intensive on the server side, and necessarily expensive. And there are other such examples where you do, like in YouTube, you have YouTube Shorts where you have a bunch of effects and filters. Those happen in real time on the camera. So that's another benefit. And then there are certain use cases, depending on the model or the industry for which you're building an app, where you might want to process data that is somewhat privacy sensitive and you don't want to send to the cloud. So there's better privacy capabilities by just keeping all of that data on the device and doing doing the ML on the device. And it complements some of the machine learning that happens in the cloud very well with these additional use cases that you can run just fully on the device.
So, yeah, you just shared all of the advantages of being able to run machine learning on a specific device and having models within like your phone, for example, which it allows the model to look at the data that's on your phone, but it helps also with security and privacy. And would you say this is more of a new area? Because machine learning has been around forever. I mean, it's been around for a very long time, but I feel like this on device is a little bit newer. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about sort of the potential for this technology and kind of where this is. You talked a bit about use cases, but specifically where you see this going and sort of the biggest advantage of this.
It is newer for sure. TensorFlow Lite launched over 7 years ago, and that was Google's way to take TensorFlow, which was already successful, and bring it to run on devices. And you couldn't just take a TensorFlow model and just like jam it onto a device. Although that those were the initial attempts were like that. They weren't adapted specifically for mobile, but mobile devices are more constrained in terms of processing power and memory. So it clearly realized that there was a more efficient way of doing this, and so that was the start of it. I wouldn't say that it's like completely new. For almost a decade now, people have been running ML on devices in some form or the other, but it's definitely not as popular as models running in the cloud, because it is much easier and much more powerful to be able to take like a large model and not have to worry about these constraints. Uh, and but there are some use cases that, like the ones that we discussed, where it does actually make sense to run them on device. Like it doesn't make sense to send all the data on the cloud, and there are certain benefits to doing the processing on device. And I actually think that as these specifically, if we talk about generative AI, which is it's what's trending right now, and what we, of course, for good reason, as these models start to get more efficient and smaller architectures, and bigger context windows, and the devices start to get more capable, I think a lot of this technology is going to start moving more and more to the device. And why wouldn't you, right? If you could have one of these generative models where it's like a text to text assistant or an image generation model, if you could have it run it on your device, have it always available, whether you're connected to the internet or not, uh, you know, why wouldn't you do that? And not only why wouldn't you do that, but it's going to unlock other use cases by being able to leverage everything that's on the device. And whether it's data or like sensor data, contextual, environmental data of your surroundings. It's early days, but there's it's also not too early in that it's been used in some forms already. And I just as a product manager who works on the developer tools in this space, I'm like really excited to see what the community builds with the technology that's available now.
What's also fascinating is that AGI has also right now has been very much referred to, and sort of the benefits of it is it becomes a tool, sort of an assistive tool. And the benefits of machine learning is the sort of the assistive element, but also the personalization. And what's more personal than, things that are on your phone? And so I think between the combination of AI being used as a tool, an assistive tool, and using your personal information to personalize things for you, and also with this concept of multimodality, between pictures, text, and audio, I mean, all of that happens so much more frequently on our phones. So much of our data, I guess, is stored on our devices. And so I can see how there's just seems to be so much more potential for applying machine learning to devices to help move that mission of making AI more personalized and also assistive. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. And when people ask me the question of like what places could AI be applied to, I actually have a tough time finding places where it won't. And all the things that you mentioned, like from the moment that you pick up your phone and you start, looking through different apps or consuming content or taking pictures. I mean, those are all things where AI can or already does make the experience better. So, for example, for pictures, Google Pixel has the photo and blur feature, where if you take a picture and it comes out a little blurry, it automatically fixes it. Or this is a few years ago, but like the night sight feature, where the phone knows how to take like multiple shots and then like put them together and then remove the noise and make it brighter and all of that. That all happens on device. And this is what we call more like traditional ML, right? Like just like the not the generative models per se. But then when you take generative models and you take the data that we consume or create, whether it's helping you summarize something or give you, synthesize something or help you write, or if you're in a chat thread, like summarize that for you. A lot of this can and does happen on the cloud already. But as you just mentioned, if all starts on the device, it can be applied even in more places and more immediately if it's just available on that same device.
Absolutely. And that also unlocks accessibility too. Because I think, for a lot of the world, there is limited access to the internet, to computers, and mobile phones seem to be the most easily obtainable device. And so being able to have machine learning run on device will also unlock more accessibility. Is that true? And can you talk more about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Two things come to mind actually as you mention accessibility. So the first one is Project Game Face, which was at Google I/O last year and again this year.
Can you briefly describe what Project Game Face is for those who don't know what it is?
Yeah, so Project Game Face essentially allows people who have mobility issues for a variety of reasons to interact with their computer or their mobile device just with facial gestures, and there's been very good case studies done on this, and you should watch the YouTube video for it. But it really warms my heart to see that technology that we work on as a team can have such a positive effect on people's lives, and in particularly in the area of accessibility, as you mentioned. Um, so that is one area of accessibility. The other one.
Just to summarize, so accessibility is essentially the technology that you built helps people use their phones without having to use their hands. And so you can just use your eyes, your mouth, your face to be able to interact and call someone or text someone just by using your face.
Exactly. So it's a form of interacting with the UI without having to touch it or without having to speak. And it's just facial movements, your eyes, your lips. Yeah, it enables those people to interact with those devices in that way. The second one, which is a very different one, and I think it's the one that you were alluding to when you said about the accessibility in different parts of the world, it's actually someone who stopped by our demo booth, which was telling us about a use case that they have. And just so let me talk a little bit about the technology that we made available this year and we presented at Google I/O. So one of the things that we launched was the ability to run large language models on device. We have the MediaPipe LLM inference API, and it allows you to run models ranging from like 1B to 7B. And we have 4 of the most popular models, including Gemma 2B and 7B, available as part of the API. Another thing that we showcased was the ability to use retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, with those models. So one thing to understand about these smaller LLMs is that, again, like brains, right? If we like talk about humans, their capacity to store information is a little more limited. But that doesn't mean that their reasoning capabilities are diminished. So they may not be able to store that much, but they can still reason. And what those models combined with RAG, what you can do is, think of it as an open book exam. If you have a book and you can open that book and you can look up information, you might be able to still, answer a question very well. And that's what RAG helps with. We can go into the details of how exactly it works, but at a very high level, let's say you have a book on a particular topic. Actually, the example that we showed during the demo was you have a website with a bunch of recipes, and you have questions about a particular recipe, and you want to know, like, well, actually, I want to know what ingredients are required for this particular recipe. And of course, the model does not remember all the recipes that exist in the world. But what it would do is it would look at that page and say, like, okay, what section is the one that's more relevant to this question? And then it looks that up and it pulls that out, and then it feeds that to the model alongside the question. So if you have the question that's about a cheesecake recipe, and so it first looks at, like, okay, here's the cheesecake recipe. Let me load the entire text. And then the question was, what are the ingredients in the cheesecake recipe? So now the question with the text, now that task becomes much easier for that model to complete.
Right. So with a larger model, if you asked it, give me the ingredients for a cheesecake recipe, it would go off of all of the recipes that exist sort of out there on the internet, for example. And the smaller one will just take the actual recipe that you're looking at and still able to retrieve sort of the ingredients from that page.
Right. And depending on what the smaller model has been trained on, like, look, it could have been trained just on recipes or on a particular recipe book. It could have been fine-tuned on that, and it would remember. But a more generalized small model will have a tough time answering the question of what goes in a cheesecake and what the ingredients are.
Not just cheese.
Cheese and cake. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the answer.
That's how my model works.
Yeah, see?
Oh, that's fascinating. And this is, I'm new to this space too, and our listeners are very familiar with this because I keep saying this, but this is fascinating for me to also understand kind of the use cases and the real difference between a large language model that has access to, a huge database versus what it actually means to have a large, like a language model, but on a device with limited data. And they're still able to do similar things, but just with different capabilities. And it's making more sense to me now. And so I really appreciate you explaining that and sharing that.
Yeah, of course. No, and I think actually this is where the power of these smaller models are running on device will shine. And I predict that this is what the type of use cases where it's going to become more prevalent over the coming months and years. And so what I was talking about earlier was we had a software developer stop by our demo booth, and they said, their use case was they have, I can't remember if it was like some kind of utility workers in Africa that have to climb on poles. I think it was to fix communication equipment. And, when you're climbing on a pole, you can't take a huge manual with you, or you can't just be, at the top of the pole and like scrolling and searching. And so it would be really useful to use this large language model and have the manual, which is, again, it could be a few megabytes, not that big, but they said that it wasn't like anything too crazy in terms of size. And so you could ask a question about like, I noticed that this particular part is not working. Like, what do I do to troubleshoot it? And you can just, even using voice, ask that question of to the LLM from the application. It would look up in the manual what part is most relevant, and then it would answer the question based on that. And of course, the technology underlying that is you have this large manual that needs to first be loaded into what's called a vector database, and so it's loaded in different chunks, and then embeddings are created for those different chunks. And embeddings are just, I like to think of them as representation for meaning, right? So if I ask a question, that question gets then represented in an embedding, which is just like, it's a numerical representation, but it carries the meaning and the content of that question. And then the content is similarly indexed using these embedding models in a vector database. And then when you ask a question, a similarity is computed between the embedding of the question that I asked and the embedding of the content that was stored. So there are all these different chunks of data stored in the database. You retrieve the one that's closest. Now you have that text that you can pass to the model alongside the question, and the question gets answered.
This is fascinating, and I shouldn't be biased, but I am a bit biased around device machine learning. It seems like there's so many ways of being able to apply this technology to solve problems that are important, and also to solve problems that span the gamut of professions and knowledge and careers and things that one would need to know to help us in sort of our, not just our daily lives, but our professional lives as well. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to see kind of where this keeps going. But I would like to shift a little bit because, there has been some kind of associations, negative associations around the phone in general, right? And devices being a way that just continues to take up more of our time and more of our attention. And with machine learning, it can almost sort of take us more into being with our phones and more into sort of relying on our phones and our devices to make sense of the world, as opposed to relying more on, person-to-person connection. With this sort of evolution of devices, specifically phones, it sort of furthers us into this realm of relying more on our devices as opposed to our environment and our people. So one of the concerns is machine learning. I can see how a world in which it can both help prevent that, but it can also deepen that as well. And so are these questions that you think about, or is this something that's discussed even amongst your teams, or sort of, I would love to understand more of your position on that.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I think about a lot, both, because I encounter the same questions and challenges in my daily life. And I have kids who, are now at the age where they're starting to use devices. And, I started with computers when I was really young. And if they are interested, I'd love for them to be interested in the space and to be able to tinker with them. But I also see that it's very easy to just get sucked into it and then forget about the real world. And so I think, just us as people are going to have to be more deliberate about the use of technology. And just like with anything, there's a lot of positive that can come out of it. But if you just leave yourself on autopilot and not think about what you're doing and are purposeful and deliberate about your actions, then it can lead to less than desirable outcomes. So you have one example that I like to use of it's kind of like the positive side of things is we can spend a lot of time just consuming content, right? Like all kinds of content on your phone. It's called doom scrolling, right? And you just look at your phone and you just like scroll and scroll and scroll.
Guilty.
Yeah, who isn't? Who isn't guilty? And so one cool thing that I did, just at home, I mentioned that just during my talk as well, but I have, a couple of Raspberry Pis running at home, and I use them for like, side projects and servers that are running and scripts that run for me. And so one experiment that I started doing is that a lot of this content, which is very useful, by the way, and it actually helps me understand what the community is building around AI or around other things. A lot of these new technologies just, they're just people out there developing them. And it's not like all in research papers that you read or in books that you read. And so how do you balance the more actively consuming that content versus having somebody curate that for you and summarize it and tell you what's important. And that's one side project that I'm experimenting with, which is I have a script running. It grows to a few sources, a few APIs that are openly available to pull the data, and pulls the data from them, kind of collates it for me, creates summaries, and then sends me a digest. And that's time that I can still that's an interaction that I can still have with the content, and I can still absorb it and learn it, but I haven't necessarily spent or got sucked into some rabbit hole on an app just because I chose to go down that route. So that's just one simple example, but I really hope that in as much as possible, this technology is used for good and people are conscious and deliberate about how they use it, and they use it for all the positive aspects that it can bring.
And we also, with Google's AI principles, I think there's a lot of that thought goes into developing products and developing our technology too. So I think there's a lot of that safety component and ethical component that is embedded also within the models themselves.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure the audience has probably heard about this before, but as someone who has been at Google for many years, we take the just the privacy and the good that these products can do very seriously, both in terms of the people developing them care about that aspect of it and that they're used for good, but then also we have like teams of that look into just privacy and ethics, that make sure that we have all the right information, and then we are using the right frameworks to make these decisions around product launches.
So you announced Google AI Edge as this sort of over-encompassing brand, but you also launched some exciting features. Can you tell us a bit more about those?
In March, there was a Gemma event where Google released Gemma models to the world and to developers.
Those are Google's open models.
Exactly. Those are Google's open models. And at the same time, our on-device machine learning team released what's called the MediaPipe LLM Inference API. And it allows you to bring some of the most popular open LLM models, but to run fully on device. Gemma is one of those models. We announced that in March and talked about it again at I/O. The other thing that we launched was support for PyTorch and TensorFlow Lite. And when TensorFlow Lite was first launched, it was TensorFlow Lite, right? It was the ability to bring models authored in TensorFlow to run on devices using a more lightweight format called in a flat buffer, using the TensorFlow Lite runtime. It now supports also JAX and Keras, but this I/O we also introduced the ability to bring PyTorch models, which are hugely popular, and a lot of the new research and new models are being authored in PyTorch. So you can take a PyTorch model, use our toolchain to convert it to the right format for TensorFlow Lite, and then run it on device. What else? Let's see. We also, so I talked about the ability to bring some of these open models to run on device. And that's great if one of those open models that have already been converted and are available to you as high-level APIs are the ones that you want to use. But what if you want to use, or you want to create your own custom LLM architecture? We released the Google AI Edge Torch Generative API. And what that allows you to do is in PyTorch, you can create your own generative model architecture and then convert that to run on device. And then lastly, whether you're converting a PyTorch model to run on device or whether you're using this generative Torch API, a huge part of authoring these models, that have many layers and many different pieces, is to be able to visualize them and see, how they're composed, or, where things are slowing down, or where, quantization is working or not working. So we also release a tool called Model Explorer, which is already being used by many teams inside of Google, including Waymo and the team that develops Google Pixel phone. And we made that available to developers as well. So really proud of what the team pulled together here and all these products that they launched. And for our listeners out there, really encourage you to try all these launches and all these features, and let us know, give us feedback, let us know what great things that you're building.
Where can developers leave feedback?
So if you want to look at the documentation, you can go to the Google AI Edge page. We also have GitHub repos for Google AI Edge, and they can open an issue there to give us feedback.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sachin, for taking the time, for sharing all the incredible things that you've launched at I/O, and for the amazing conversation about, in general, what machine learning looks like on devices and the amazing potential that it has. And I'm very excited to see what is going to come up next.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun and a huge honor to be here.
The honor is ours. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like to learn more about our conversation or our guests, check out the links below. Please subscribe, and if you're feeling extra generous, give us a 5-star rating. We would love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. We'll read every one. Until next time, thank you for listening.